Okay, so I'm going to make a color wheel, and it's a fairly simple process, but I don't want to make assumptions. So what I've done is I've taken a sour cream cup and a 6x6 piece of watercolor paper, a permanent ink marker that has a wedge shape to it, so it has a fat edge to it, and I've just made a circle with the sour cream cup. Alright, and now I want to separate it into quadrants. So I'm going to measure the diameter until I get to the biggest diameter. So this is 0. So it looks like 4.5 and a little bit is my biggest diameter on this angle. So I want to cut that in half, and I'm going to be brave and go right in with my extra fine point marker, Sharpie marker, and I'm going to go extend beyond the black line. Okay, now I want to find the halfway point of that line. So it is 4 inches and an eighth, half and an eighth, so it's going to be 2 inches and a quarter and a 16th is halfway. Now I want to draw the other line and making sure that I have a 90-degree angle, and I want to separate my circle in half that way. Now I want to take this quadrant and separate it into thirds. So this is a little harder math, but I'm going to put my ruler 0 at this corner of the circle and then see what it is. We're going to call it 3 3/16. So I want to go 1 1/16 and then 1 1/16. So now I have it separated into equal thirds. I'm going to line up the middle with my first dot, and now I'm going to extend the line beyond the black line through the middle and all the way across. Okay, so I'm going to line up the circle with my dot. I'm going to start beyond the black line, go through the middle, and right across to the other side. So now I've got 2 quadrants separated into thirds. So let's do the other 2. Get this ruler out of the way. Okay, so this one is 3 1/3 as well. So I'm going to go 1 3/16, sorry. So I'm going to go 1 1/16 each. I'm going to line up the middle with my dot, get my permanent ink marker, and now I'll create the full color wheel. So where I want to have my, it's close, it's not perfect, but it's close. So now I want to separate this one in half, because that's going to be my red. So let's measure that at 1 inch. So halfway is right to there. And this time I don't necessarily have to extend beyond the black line. I'm going to go 1 2 3 and come to the 4th. This looks a little bit bigger. Of course it is. So my things aren't equal, so it's not perfect math, but and I'm going to make it right there. Should have used my pencil. Okay. Connect the dot. Okay. 1, 2, 3, and go to the fourth. So I'm going to have 3 between each of these. Once again, I want to find the halfway point. It looks to be 1 inch. A little bit. Find the halfway point. Connect the line to the center. Okay, so for this, I want red here. I'm going to take my tip off so I can spin it around. And yellow here. These are my 3 primary colors. And blue here. So red, yellow, blue in the subtractive color system are the primary colors. And then if I mix yellow and blue, I get green, and so green is halfway between them. If I mix blue and red, I get violet, because it's halfway between them. And if I mix red and yellow, I get orange. So I want to put orange halfway between them. So what's this other? Now if I mix red and orange, I get red, orange, and we say the primary color first when we refer to it. So orange and yellow makes yellow, orange. Yellow and green makes yellow, green. And blue, green, and green makes blue, green. Blue and violet makes blue, violet. Violet and red makes red, violet. So we refer to the primary color first. So there's our color wheel set up, and now we have to paint it. Okay, so we're back with the painting part. So I've got water, and I've got a pipette here, and I'm just getting my paint wet. I can do this with my brush or my spray bottle, but I find this is the most efficient way to get a good solid soggy paint quicker. So I want to let that do this before I paint, then I can get my paint nice and moist. So this pipette is, you squeeze it, then release to get the water to go in. And then you want to be careful about traveling with this palette for a while, which I have to do today. This one might have a leak in it. There we go. I'm just not doing it right. So I want to mix all my warm and cool primary colors, or chart all my warm and cool primary colors on my color wheel. So I've taped down on all sides my color wheel with all my colors labeled ahead of time with permanent ink. Make sure it's permanent ink and not like a Tombow pen or water soluble ink, because it'll mess up our experiment. And then I'm going to paint at a little bit of an angle. I have this handy easel light. It's a lightweight tabletop easel with an adjustable angle up to 30 degrees that I really like for watercolor. Right, so now it's time to color in our chart. So we're going to start with the red, and a red that skews towards the orange we call a warm red. On my chart and in your kits, I'm going to use the Puro Red by Daniel Smith. So I want to start strong over the black line and get it so that this pigment strength is fairly strong. And I'm working at an angle with my easel light. And as I come down, I want to weaken the pigment a bit and pull the bead down. So that's why I want to set it up at an angle with my tabletop easel. So now I'm going to weaken the pigment some more and then pull that bead down the page so I get a tonal wash of color. I don't want it to all just be the same value or strength down to the middle. Then I'm going to wipe off all the water on my brush and then just collect it as it goes into the corner there. And then I have a blow dryer. I'm going to go ahead and blow dry this off just a bit so that I can turn the board around without having backwashes happen. Okay, so I'm going to do all the warm colors first. So now I'm going to move to the yellow. So I'm going to turn my board around. That's why I like this tabletop easel. It's real lightweight. And I can vary the angle between 0 and 30 degrees. Okay, so my warm yellow skews towards orange. So I want to put it on the side that skews towards the orange side. So once again, I'm going to start very strong. And because I've prepared my paint and got it really wet, I can get strong really easy out of the well. I try never to paint directly from the well to the painting. I go out to the mixing area. That's where I determine the strength of my pigment. Okay, so now I'm going to weaken the pigment and pull it towards the center. Each stroke, just make it a little bit weaker. So I end up getting a tonal wash of color. I got this lovely bead forming up. So now I don't have to put any paint in it. I'm just going to collect that bead down to the center. Okay, once again I'm going to dry that off. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the blue. So the warm blue skews towards the violet side. So I'm going to take a little bit of my towel and wipe off a mixing area so I can get a good test. Keep that in my hand. I'm going to try to only clean my brush with this dirty water. Okay, so I'm going to pull out some blue, really strong. This is Ultramarine Light by Holbein. Any ultramarine blue is fine. Daniel Smith has French ultramarine blue and just ultramarine blue. I like the French better. Okay, so I'm going to go to the warm side. I've got to tell myself a couple of times so I don't get it wrong. Go over the blue line with the thick paint. Clean my brush. Get some more water. Weaken my pigment as I go down the page. So go from the clean water into the mixing area and weaken that pigment as I go down the page. By the time I get to the middle, I have a very thin line. So this time I'm actually going to collect the bead better than I did with the yellow, because blue shows up a lot better than yellow does. It's a lot darker of a pigment. Okay, I'm going to blow that off a little bit so I can turn my board. And now I'm going to do the cool colors. So I'm going to get rid of the paint that was in there, spritz it off a little bit so that I can do my cool primaries now. I need to fill up that water bottle. It's getting a little low. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush really well. I'm going to do the yellow first because the yellow gets contaminated easier. So now I'm going to use the yellow that skews towards the green. In my palette, it's Hansa Yellow Light. A lemon yellow is also a cool yellow, as is Azo Yellow or Arulian. So whatever you have in your palette, but I like this Hansa Yellow Light. It's a real pure primary yellow, but it's cool. So now I'm going to put this towards the green side. And once again, I want it really dark over the top of that line so I can do my test. And then weaken the paint a bit as it comes towards the center. So I get a tonal range of color within my wash. I can see what this yellow looks like when it's dry, and when it's weak, and when it's strong. And then I'm going to wipe off the brush and collect that bead several times. And I'll dry it off. And I'll move around to the red. So now we have a red that skews to the purple side. We call that a cool red. So in your kits, it's a quinacridone rose, I believe, or in the kits that I sell, whether you have the quit or not. There's various cool reds. Permanent alizarin crimson is also a cool red, as is quinacridone red. Skews slightly red. It's not as big of a difference as the rose is. Okay, so now I want to get it thinner as I go down the page. I went right over the black line. And get thinner as I get to the center. Collect that bead by getting rid of all the water on my brush. I tend to have a wet handle. Just clean that up a little bit. Okay, dry that off. If I don't dry it off first and I turn the board, the weaker pigment will push into the darker pigment and leave a background. Okay, and finally we'll do the cool blue. So in the little kits that I sell, the cool blue is the phthalo blue green shade, which I have here. It looks very turquoise. It's very dark when it's strong. So I want to start strong, go over the line, black line, clean my brush, add a little water. Now I saved this one for last because it's my favorite color, but it's also a kind of a temperamental color. It's very staining, very pretty, and it actually looks its best when it's not at its darkest, which is an unusual. So now we start to see the beauty of that phthalo as we get it to a thinner state. So it's a staining color. It doesn't granulate. It's really dark. Add a little bit. That's a little bit too abrupt of a transition there. So it stains. It's very dark, very transparent. And that's what painting over the black line is all about. So we'll let it dry a little bit, and we'll see what it looks like when it's dried off. Okay, so we've got all our primary warms and cools charted now. So now what we want to do is mix our secondary colors. So the only thing I want you to mix is the green that has the blue and the yellow that's closest together. That'll give you your brightest green. So we're not going to do these two for this green. We're going to do just the cool yellow, which I still have some of here, and the phthalo blue. So we need more yellow than blue. So let me put in order to make an even green. So that's still pretty yellow green. So let's add a little more blue to it yet, till we get what feels like an even green. But it's a pretty green because we're using the right temperatures of our pigment. It feels like a pretty even green. I might put a little more yellow in there. And I want to get it stronger, less water. So I shouldn't have gone over that while I still had blue on my brush. So I want to get a little bit stronger. It was feeling a little weak to start with. Okay, that feels like a very even green, bright green. Might be slightly on the blue side, but oh, it's still too weak. So now I don't have to skew or do just half of the circle. I just want to make sure that I know how to mix the brightest green. So I want to use the two primaries that are closer together. Okay, then I'll slowly get it a little bit weaker and pull it down to the center, just like we did before. So that is a green mixed with the two components. It's just not dark enough there, so I'm just pumping it up over the line a little bit. There we go. It's not dark enough over that. I used, my blue was too weak. But that makes the prettiest green. So if you want the dullest green, you want to mix the two on the outside. If you want the brightest green, you mix the two that are closest together on the wheel. The cool and the cool. And that's for green. Okay, so then I want to do the orange mix. So I'm going to clean out my brush really well. And now I want to use the warm red and the warm yellow because they're closest together. So in order to get a beautiful orange, I need to get the two that are closer together. So I'm going to take some of the red, pretty strong, and I'll probably need a lot more of the yellow. So I want to get quite a bit on my brush and make a pretty orange. It's still a little too red. I'm going to get all the water out. I try to be disciplined and not go back into the yellow before my brush is cleaned off. I don't always do it, as you can tell by the green tones there. That's a pretty good orange. I'm going to do just a little more yellow. It still feels like it's skewing a little red orange. Okay, and I'm going to go in thick this time over the orange. Go over the black line and then slowly weaken the pigment. And pull it down the page. So if I swirl my brush and then go into my pigment, it's going to weaken the pigment. Wipe off my brush on my towel and pull it down so I get a graded wash of color. Dry that off a little so I can turn the board over and not create a background. Okay, so to mix a nice orange, I need the warm yellow and the warm red because they're closer together on the color wheel. So let's do violet. Now violet, the warm blue is closer to the red, so we want to use the warm blue, but now we want to use the cool red. So we're mixing temperatures on this one. I'm going to get a little paper towel and clean out a mixing area so I can do the mix. We can't use the phthalo anymore, so I want to get rid of that blue so it doesn't skew my test. So both of these are about the same value and about the same intensity, so I can mix up an even blue better. I really should clean my water. I'm gonna try it. Okay, so I want to get some strong red. The red isn't quite as intense as the blue, So maybe a little more red than blue. So now I'm gonna get the warm blue, the ultramarine blue, the one that skews towards purple already. And let's see if that's gonna give us an even pretty violet. It feels a little too blue, so I have to use quite a bit more red. Maybe just a touch more blue. Okay, touch more blue. Okay, so then we'll go over the line again. Yeah, that feels like a pretty even violet. Maybe not quite strong enough. Get some cleaner water and pull that pigment down. It's got a little too weak too soon. I might have to do what I did with the green. I'm not going to weaken it anymore, maybe just a little bit more. And then I'm going to pull that violet all the way down to the center. So you can see from doing the chart that a mix of two primaries makes a secondary if it's an even mix. So red and yellow, if you want to get the prettiest orange, mix the two that are closest together. If you want to mix red and blue, mix the two that are closest together to get the prettiest mix. And as for green, you want to mix blue and yellow, the two that are closest together, to get the brightest, most intense, pretty mix. I still think I need to make that pigment stronger over the top of the line so that we can get a good test of transparency. If you mix two transparent colors, you should get a transparent color resulting. If you mix any opaque with any transparent, the opaque will usually take over and dominate. So that's our color wheel. If you like to remember how it goes around, Roy, G, Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. There's your color wheel. I'm going to save these red, violet, and red, orange for tube colors. So creating a color wheel, it really helps you to understand colors. So if you mix a primary that are far apart, you're going to get a dull secondary color. If you mix colors that are close together, you're going to get a bright secondary color. So if you want a dull mix, pick a dull, muddy, brownish, grayish purple. Pick the red, orange, you know, the red that skews towards orange, and the blue that skews towards green. The red that is cool with this makes the best violet, but this one makes a pretty good violet too. But this red is so close to orange that it'll muddy up any time you try to make a violet out of it. And in the greens, a lot of plein air painters will just take ultramarine blue and new gamboge or cadmium yellow deep into the field because they can mix those quickly to an olive orange or olive green instead of a bright green. This is not usually what appears in nature. Usually the olive greens are what's out there. Every once in a while in the spring you get a pretty mix. So that's the lesson on the color wheel. I find it much more informative if you make your own.